The Miami Dolphins are not messing around after pulling off a series of bold trades, including the acquisition of Darren Waller and Minkah Fitzpatrick. The front office might not be done yet. With Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith now out, could Miami be gearing up for another blockbuster move, this time for tight end Kyle Pitts? Let's break it all down. It's been a whirlwind week in South Florida. First, the Dolphins made headlines by trading for former Pro Bowl tight end Darren Waller and bringing back Minkah Fitzpatrick, a first-round talent who adds firepower to the secondary. In exchange, they parted ways with Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, two moves that raised eyebrows across the league. But even with Waller on board, let's be honest, the tight end room in Miami still feels thin. There's a sense that this offense, which already thrives on speed and mismatch potential, is one more dynamic playmaker away from being downright unstoppable. That's where Kyle Pitts enters the conversation. Before we dive into the latest Dolphins rumors, take a second to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and smash that bell icon so you never miss breaking Miami Dolphins news. All right, let's keep rolling. Now, why Kyle Pitts? For starters, this isn't just wild speculation. There was serious talk earlier this offseason about a potential Ramsey for Pitts swap. At the time, Atlanta reportedly showed interest in acquiring Ramsey, and league insiders like Jeremy Fowler and Jordan Schultz noted that multiple teams had reached out about Pitts' availability. While nothing is imminent, the door is clearly open. Pitts exploded onto the scene during his rookie season, flashing rare athleticism and elite receiving skills for a tight end. But since then, it's been a frustrating ride, and not because of talent. Atlanta simply hasn't used him the right way. In a more aggressive, pass-heavy offense like Miami's, Pitts could finally reach the ceiling everyone expected when he was drafted 4th overall. With Darren Waller now leading the tight end room and Jonnu Smith shipped out, Miami still has room and the need for another playmaker at the position. Adding Kyle Pitts would not only give Tua another weapon, it could shift the entire offensive ceiling. And with Miami showing they're not afraid to make bold moves, this one feels possible. Let's be real about this Dolphins tight end room. Even with Darren Waller now in the mix, this group still feels like a weak link. Waller, when healthy, can be electric. He's a mismatch nightmare and has the potential to be Miami's top receiving tight end. But here's the issue. He hasn't played a snap of meaningful football in nearly a year and a half. That's a long layoff, and betting big on a bounce back is risky business. Behind him, you're looking at Durham Smythe, Julian Hill, and Pharaoh Brown, solid depth guys, but absolutely not players you want leading the charge in a high-octane offense. This isn't a group that strikes fear into defenses. It's arguably one of the least threatening tight end units in the league, even after adding Waller. And let's not ignore the reality. There's a very real chance that Waller doesn't make the final 53-man roster. If things don't click during camp, if the fit isn't right, or if injuries creep back in, Miami could walk away from the experiment without much hesitation. That's where Kyle Pitts becomes incredibly attractive. He's young. He's athletic. He's a rare weapon with untapped upside who could instantly transform Miami's offensive versatility. Adding him would give the Dolphins a true TE1, not just a project or a hopeful reclamation. Pitts would bring legitimacy, confidence, and explosive potential to a position that's been lacking firepower for years. Now, let's talk production. His rookie season? Over 1,000 yards. Since then, the numbers dipped, but not because of a lack of talent. Pitts has been hamstrung by inconsistent quarterback play and poor offensive design in Atlanta. Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and a mid-season rotation of backup-level passers haven't exactly set him up for success. Insert Tua Tagovailoa, the most accurate and rhythm-based quarterback Pitts would have ever worked with. No, he wouldn't need to carry the load in an offense already stacked with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. But that's what makes him so dangerous in this system. He wouldn't be the main focus. He'd be the uncovered mismatch. Kyle Pitts in Miami isn't about desperation. It's about turning a weakness into a true strength. and building a unit that can survive any defensive scheme thrown at it. There's been this lingering label around Kyle Pitts that he's always injured. But here's the truth. Pitts has played in 17 games in 3 of the last 4 seasons. That's not exactly fragile. Yes, there have been some soft tissue concerns, particularly hamstring issues, but nothing that screams major red flag. Now let's talk performance. Even in a year where the Falcons' offense sputtered, Pitts quietly finished as a top half tight end in nearly every key stat. His receptions were on the lower end, but his yards per catch, total yardage, and touchdown numbers? All better than most starters across the league. So no, he hasn't lived up to being the number 4 overall pick. A top 5 selection at tight end is supposed to be a generational player, and Pitts hasn't reached that tier yet. But he's still a very good NFL tight end who has been trapped in a system that's never used him correctly. That's the biggest point here. Atlanta's offensive design, first under Arthur Smith, now with Zach Robinson, never gave Pitts a real shot to shine. And remember, this coaching staff, they didn't draft him. He's not their guy. And when regimes change in the NFL, that matters. Need proof? Look at the final stretch of last season. In Week 14, Pitts played 78% of the snaps. But then, with Atlanta still fighting for a playoff spot, his usage suddenly tanked. Less than 50% of snaps in each of the last 4 games. That's not a rotation. That's a phase out. Why would a team under playoff pressure sideline one of its most talented weapons? It doesn't make football sense. Unless they were quietly moving on. And that's exactly why Miami needs to be ready. Pitts isn't just a luxury target. He's a rare buy low opportunity on a player who's still young, still explosive, and still capable of becoming a dominant force, especially in the right offense. And let's be clear, Mike McDaniel's system? That is the right offense. Between the Jeremy Fowler and Jordan Schultz reports, and the drastic drop in usage late last season, the signs are becoming clearer. Kyle Pitts could be available, and the Atlanta Falcons might just be waiting for the right offer. This current Falcons regime didn't draft him. They didn't design their offense around him. And when you connect the dots, reduced snaps, minimal involvement despite playoff stakes, it starts to look less like strategy and more like separation. So the question is, should Miami be the team to make the move? Absolutely. Here's why. Let's rewind a bit. Think back to how effective Jonnu Smith was for Miami last season. He wasn't the flashiest player on the roster, but he filled a very specific and important role. Red zone efficiency, yards after the catch, and quick hitting plays in the screen game. Smith thrived in those setups. 8 touchdowns, constant movement, and top-tier YAC production. Now imagine giving that exact role, and more, to a player with Pitts' size, speed, and natural receiving talent. Pitts has an elite catch radius, athleticism you simply don't see in most tight ends, and the kind of upside that could stretch a defense even when he's not the primary option. But here's what's wild. Despite all that talent, he was barely used in short area plays last season in Atlanta. In fact, according to his 2024 receiving chart, Pitts was targeted behind the line of scrimmage just 3 times, total. 3. In a league where tight ends are regularly used as safety valves and screen weapons. That's basically ignoring one of his best tools. Put him in Mike McDaniel's system, where motion, misdirection, and quick strike screens are staples. And you're not just fixing Miami's tight end group. You're unlocking a weapon the league hasn't really seen used right yet. When you dig into Kyle Pitts' 2024 receiving chart, one thing becomes obvious. This guy thrives between the numbers, and especially in the short to intermediate range. Let's break it down. In the 0 to 10-yard range over the middle, Pitts was targeted 29 times, pulling in 23 catches for 226 yards with a quarterback rating of 99.1 when targeted. That's the kind of reliability any offense wants in those quick strike moments. And Miami's scheme is built to exploit exactly that area. Then step it up to the intermediate zone, that 10 to 20-yard stretch. Pitts caught 4 of 8 targets there, And his QB rating on those throws? A scorching 135.4. That kind of production between the hashes is money, especially in a McDaniel offense that creates space and forces defenders to cover the full width of the field. With Miami's elite speed on the outside pulling coverage deep, the middle stays open, and that's where Pitts does his best work. Do the math, and here's what you get. Pitts hauled in 27 of his 39 total catches between the numbers, picking up around half of his total yardage and scoring 3 touchdowns in that zone alone. But there's still one stat that stands out for the wrong reasons. He was targeted just 3 times behind the line of scrimmage. That's not a typo. 3 total screen or quick hit targets, despite his athleticism, size, and open field potential. Atlanta gave him nothing easy. That's where Miami can change the game. We've already seen how effective Jonnu Smith was last season in the screen game and red zone. Pitts can do those same things, and potentially do them better. He brings more polish as a route runner, more value as a possession threat, and more upside as a red zone mismatch. He's not just a vertical seam guy. He can be your middle of the field anchor, a third down safety net, and a dangerous screen target, all in one package. Pitts in Miami isn't just about upgrading tight end talent. It's about unlocking a player who's been boxed in for far too long. So what would a Kyle Pitts trade actually look like for Miami? Let's start with a bit of reality. While Pitts could very well be available, Atlanta isn't just going to give him away. Even with his reduced usage and an unclear future with the team, he's still their most talented tight end by a mile. Take him out of the equation, and they're left with a room that ranks near the bottom of the league. That said, there's a path, but it has to be smart. The Falcons may want a tight end in return, and Miami could leverage someone like Pharaoh Brown as part of the package. Brown's blocking ability and veteran presence would immediately become an upgrade for Atlanta's depth chart. And for Miami, he's expendable if Waller stays healthy and productive. As for draft compensation, it's unlikely Miami would part with a premium day 2 pick unless Pitt's value starts climbing again. But a day 3 selection, perhaps a 4th rounder, could spark real interest, especially when paired with a functional veteran like Brown. Is it a flashy offer? No, but if Atlanta is motivated to move on from Pitts and avoid the looming question of whether to extend him, this kind of deal gives them short-term help and future flexibility. From Miami's perspective, it's a calculated risk, but it's one that could pay off massively if Waller doesn't return to form in camp. And that's the wild card here. If Waller looks like his old self, great. No need to rush. But if things go south, if injuries linger or the production just isn't there, the Dolphins will need to pivot fast, especially with an offense that relies so heavily on layered weapons in the passing game. That's why a potential move for Pitts feels like something that could come closer to training camp or preseason, once the coaching staff has seen the tight end group in action. Right now, the priority is likely still on addressing the cornerback position, especially after moving on from Jalen Ramsey. Still, don't be surprised if Miami's front office keeps this possibility simmering in the background. Because if the right moment comes, a move for Kyle Pitts could still be on the table.